When you want to change your relationship with alcohol, it is often a much longer process than society makes us believe. In fact, research shows that it takes upwards of 7 years of thinking about changing your relationship with alcohol before you actually make any sustainable changes. And in those 7 years, it's typical to maybe try to drink less, maybe to try to take a break from alcohol, or to have it be something that you're constantly thinking about. Now, that is the average. 7 years it takes for someone when they first start thinking about changing their relationship with alcohol to make sustainable changes. Excuse me, let me get me some water. Now, I don't know about you, but that makes me feel a whole lot better. It makes me feel a whole lot better that it really does take a lot longer than we're told to believe about how to make changes to your relationship with alcohol. Excuse me. Morning. Hello, Stacy. It's great to see you. And so when you're trying to change your relationship with alcohol and it feels like it's taking longer than it should, maybe you've made efforts in the past. Maybe this isn't the first time you're trying to take a break. Maybe you've tried to do something in the past before. And now maybe as you're doing something today, someone from your past says something hurtful to you. Maybe they're like, oh, you're trying this again? You're trying to do that thing? Well, you failed last time. And they're being really snide and rude. Maybe they're not even so rude, but they're just like, oh, honey, like, good luck. We'll see how this goes. And they don't really believe that you're going to make a change. Now, all of these are coming from a place that really doesn't understand the phenomenon of how to change a relationship with alcohol, which we'll talk about today. Did you know that in dry January this year, a lot of Americans committed to it? A lot, right? I think it was 1 in 3 Americans actually tried to do dry January this year. And they found that the average person, the average participant who was doing dry January only made it 10 days. 10 days, that's it, right? That was the average. Obviously, there's people like you who have gone longer, or maybe you didn't even try it this year. It doesn't matter. But the average person only made it 10 days into dry January, which gives me this knowing, this deep, deep, deep knowing that it's not just people who really, really struggle with a severe problem with alcohol who have trouble removing it from their life. Everybody who drinks regularly has trouble removing alcohol from their life. Now think about it. If you were to grab some random person out of a restaurant or bar and you were just to tell them you're never allowed to drink again, how much would you have to pay them to agree to that to you? Right? We have so elevated the role of alcohol in our life that we think it's such a necessary thing in our world. And we have this notion that only the most severe problem drinkers are addicted. And of course, that could be true to a certain extent physiologically. But we don't really recognize how everyone has emotional dependence on alcohol if they are regularly drinking. Otherwise, they wouldn't be regularly drinking. It still needs some kind of benefits, needs, or comfort for them as well. Now, if a ton of normal drinkers, let's just say that word, I hate it, but if a normal drinkers can't go more than 10 days without alcohol, why would we expect someone who maybe has a more complicated relationship to go so much more longer? And yet we do in our society, right? Let's give an example. Say a woman is, really struggling with alcohol and drinking vodka at most times of the day. Like she's not able to be a parent for her children. She's not able to even pick them up from school. It's really, really bad, right? And you see this woman and someone on the outside just says, lady, you're going to lose your kids. You have to stop drinking. And we can't even understand, we can't wrap our minds around why this person wouldn't stop drinking because they might lose their kids. And yet, then that same person who's having that same thought also has a relationship with alcohol and can't go more than 10 days without it. Even regular drinkers have trouble removing alcohol from their life. Even people who have a somewhat moderate relationship with alcohol have trouble removing it from their life. I have worked with people who only drink 1 or 2 drinks at a time, but it's become a regular habit in their life. Even they have trouble removing alcohol from their life, right? And so when someone says something hurtful, like, oh, you're going to do this again, I would take it with a grain of salt. Because have they removed alcohol from their life? Is someone who's saying that a drinker, right? I mean, what a freaking, paradox. How is that supposed to make sense if someone who's actually still drinking says something hurtful to you about trying to make a change? Because even though that you, in relation to them, might be considered the heavier drinker or the one that has a more complicated relationship with alcohol, if they can't even do it, if they've never done it before, who are they to say anything? So again, I just want to point out that fact. In dry January, something that 1 in 3 Americans have now done, in all kinds of drinking habits, all kinds of consumption levels, most average people only went 10 days before they crumbled. So this is a lot harder than people make it out to seem. And something that amazes me often is that sometimes the people with the worst relationship with alcohol all of a sudden just decide to not drink anymore and quit. And they do it. And we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, and if not millions of people, who have done it that way. They literally get to a point where they hit rock bottom and they just can't live like that anymore and they just quit. And yet then the person who's maybe drinking more moderately has a way harder time of leaving behind alcohol. Why is that? Sometimes someone with a rock bottom has a greater why because it's really compelling them to change. And oftentimes someone at an earlier junction just doesn't see that why. So if anyone ever says something hurtful to you about, oh, you're trying this again, or maybe you say you're doing dry January, you're not going to drink in February, and people are like, yeah, we'll see how that goes. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't believe you. I mean, it is literally, if they are themselves also drinking, then like they have absolutely no understanding of what it looks like to remove alcohol from your life. And that's the irony, is that most people, unless they've decided to stop drinking, drink, right? The huge majority of the Western cultures, unless someone has already decided to stop drinking like you, drink. So it's more than likely that someone who is being rude or being condescending to you about your own drinking patterns also has a pretty steady relationship with alcohol. And I love to ask, literally, obviously we have these stereotypes of people who drink really, really heavily. But what's the difference between someone who drinks every single day and only has a glass of wine? One, right? So we think of that as the epitome of moderate drinking, right? It is supposedly good for you. That I say in air quotes because it's been proven to be absolutely not good for you. A daily glass of wine is actually bad for your heart, not good for your heart. But in our consciousness, in our cultural consciousness, we imagine that someone who drinks 1 glass of wine with wine every single day is the saint, is the one who's doing it right with their relationship with alcohol. And yet, to be driven to have a glass of wine every single day is called emotional dependence. It is such an emotional dependence. And those people who have a glass of wine every single day, when they try to remove themselves from that habit, they have a really, really hard time. And trust me, I've worked with people on all kinds of consumption levels. People even who drink 1 glass of wine at a time have a hard time removing it from their life. So it just goes to show me that we all have a complicated emotional dependence on alcohol because we've all been raised in the society that makes us believe that alcohol is necessary for a fun, fulfilling, and relaxed life. We have these social, cultural ideas placed upon alcohol that make us believe that we need it, that it is necessary, that it is the secret glue to socializing, that it helps you relax, that it makes you feel more sophisticated with the food and wine. There's so many cultural attachments to alcohol that we've all been raised with. And so it doesn't matter sometimes. I like to say, like, when you come and stumble upon me and my work, when you come and read a book like this, Euphoric, Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You, I don't care what your drinking looked like. I don't care if you considered yourself a light drinker, a moderate drinker, a regular drinker, a heavy drinker, a binge drinker, a weekend drinker, social drinker, because we all have the same cultural attachments to alcohol. We've all been conditioned to not only drink it habitually at all of these designated periods, which basically is almost any time past 5 p.m., right? But definitely socializing, and definitely on Fridays, and definitely on the restaurant, and definitely on the vacation. We've literally been conditioned to do that. But also that it forms a habit that literally gets repeated over and over in our brain, and it really does settle into this comfort zone of ours. This is like the cultural, sociological lens on which we've grown up in. So no one is to blame for having an alcohol habit. And we all, to a certain extent, have emotional dependence on alcohol. Even someone who drinks once a week, I mean, if they didn't have that type of dependence on alcohol, they wouldn't be drinking it, right? And it might not be a big thing. It might not be a big thing, but it's this still some kind of thing in their mind that attaches some kind of pleasure or benefit or comfort to alcohol, right? Or else they wouldn't drink it. So understanding that, I think, can kind of give you a better understanding to know that if someone is being rude to you, they might have their own red flag around alcohol. Maybe they're insecure about their own drinking. Maybe they don't even want you to change. And now here's another thing. When someone is close to you, there's this analogy called the bucket of crabs. Basically, what happens when you put crabs in a bucket, that maybe you're about to kill or eat or steam or something like that, one crab might try to crawl out the side of the bucket. He might really try to climb on top of everyone else and get out and escape. And it's been proven that the other crabs will actually try to attack that crab and bring it back down. And now this analogy has famously been used to describe our families, our loved ones, our close ones, because change is often met with resistance. People fear change so much. If you change, they fear that they might lose you. They might fear that you will outgrow them. Or how about this? Let's say in a partnership, one person is always more how do I say this correctly? One person is always maybe doing it better. Maybe one person has their life more figured out. Maybe they have, more healthy habits in their lifestyle, and the other person is kind of more behind in that sense, right? In that relationship, there's a power dynamic. There's this way that they relate to each other. And the person who maybe feels more on top of things might actually get validation from being that way comparison to someone else. So maybe that happens in siblings too, just not romantic relationships. So maybe, between a sister and another sister, the older sister has her life together and the younger sister feels more of a screw up. The older sister might actually get this validation that, oh, my life is so good. I'm so much more wise and smart and all the things she thinks because she has her younger sister to compare herself to. But if you took that older sister and you put her in a room of go-getters, people who are obsessed with improving their lives, she might now feel like the one who doesn't have her life together, right? So sometimes in a relationship between two other people, one person might actually get a smugness, literally from being the person who has more power. And so when you start to try to change that dynamic, when you start to say, no, I'm going to get healthy, no, I'm going to stop drinking, no, I'm going to really live a life and design it according to my values and my dreams, you start to shift that power dynamic. And that might make other people uncomfortable. We fear change so much because literally we fear that we are going to lose that person or that they will outgrow us. And that is really common in a romantic relationship. Let me give you this example. My husband runs marathons, so he runs half marathons, sorry. He runs half marathons, he will run them almost every month. He's crazy. He signs up for a race and runs it every month. He's a big runner. He runs most days of the week, right? When we were first, doing our first half marathon, we both ran together, right? And so I could keep up with him. We had the same kind of pace. I even ran faster than him in our first race together. Sometimes I could run farther than him in certain training races. But now he smoked me, right? He is so much more far gone. He's so much more conditioned. He's so much more he really kept up this habit, and it's a big, big hobby in his life. And so sometimes when he wakes up and goes on a run, I get annoyed, right? I'm like, oh yeah, you're gonna go run. You know what I mean? Because I'm not doing it too. And there's this part of me that even fears oh, he's just gonna keep getting better and better and better. I'm never gonna be able to catch up to him. So even in the most benign scenarios, we fear change. And so when someone says something hurtful to you, it might not just be to bring you down. It might also be because they don't want you to succeed. Not because they don't love you, but because it might really change the dynamic in your relationship where you're the one who has, your life together, and you're the one who's making healthy choices, and you're the one who has more of that just sense of assuredness that you're really living your life according to your values. And that might make them feel scared. That might also make them feel will she even like me anymore? We spend our Thursday, Fridays, and Saturdays drinking together. What is she even going to want to hang out with me anymore? So there's all these weird dynamics that really go into, especially relationships and people thinking that you're not going to change. And I want to say that anyone who has ever said anything rude, condescending, patronizing, infantilizing, literally, like, screw them. Have they ever changed? Have they ever made such a big change in their life? Have they quit drinking? Have they done anything like that big? Because usually it's not the people who are ahead of us who criticize us. Like, I'm a successful entrepreneur, I'm a coach, I'm an author, I am an alcohol-free coach. When I hear of someone even starting their first step to either take a break from alcohol or to write a book or to start a business, I'm over here like, yes, that's so amazing. I'm so proud of you that you're going to find so much fulfillment. I can't wait for you to experience this journey. I'm here to help you. I'm here to rally you, right? And that's not just my personality. I've already gone that. I've already done that stuff. So when I look back at anyone else doing it, I'm so excited for them. No one ahead of you will ever criticize you. People who are ahead of you will make you feel that, like they're so excited, they're proud, they can't wait for you to start this, because they have a more better general understanding that most humans on this planet don't just pick up change, right? Most people live in a status quo. Most people live in a life of mediocrity. So to see someone like really like, okay, you're at the beginning stages of making this change in your life, they get super excited. Now, who does criticize you? It's the people who are with you or behind you, right? So it's like, have you ever maybe heard of that conversation where you want to go start your own business and your uncle's like, oh, well, most businesses fail within the first 5 years and you're going to go bankrupt and it's not going to work out, right? Your uncle is not the guy who started the business. Your uncle is the guy who never left his day job and never pursued his own dream of starting his own business. And because he never did it and he made this excuse for himself about why he never did it, now he wants to bring other people down back to reality, right? And make them believe that it's not possible too. Do you see what I'm saying? It's the people who usually don't go out and make the change or don't go out and live their dreams that are the ones who are the naysayers. They're the ones who criticize. They're the ones who make people feel bad about changing. And so, I've worked with clients where this could come from like your mom, honestly, right? Like your mom could be really domineering and just like really rude about it and just not really want to see that. And maybe in a way, like you changing threatens the dynamic of her position in your life, of her being able to even domineer you. People who change, people who remove alcohol from their life, they also form better boundaries. They also, like, their self-worth goes up. They also stop putting up with people's other behavior. And sometimes people get away with a lot of like really bad behavior in our lives and we put up with it because we have a low sense of self-worth from drinking. And so if you make that change, it really does threaten that other person. So when someone says something rude, it's just one thing to remember is like, it's not about you. They're really not talking about you. I like to think of, when people are rude, when stuff is going on the internet, when someone says something weird about me, when I hear about this with my clients, what I love to tell you is put on your psychologist hat. As you're changing, as you're growing, you are learning so much more about your own emotions. You're learning about how human beings, what kind of patterns of thought we have, what kind of emotions we have, what kind of tendencies we have. You are doing this deep dive and learning so much more about yourself and about just human behavior in general. And so what I like to tell my clients is I want you to put on the hat of a psychologist. I want you to pretend that you are really like dissecting the human behavior around you. And so you don't see it as necessary an attack on you. You're just trying to understand, why would someone say that? Why would anyone act that way? Why would someone do that? And when you put on your psychologist hat, you kind of take away some of the emotional connection to it. And you can see clearly, okay, like maybe they have their own insecurities and that's why they said that. Maybe they don't want me to change. Maybe they're literally trying to, bring me back down because they themselves aren't making the changes that they want in their life. There's all these different reasons that maybe you could find in the specific situation in which you might be in of why that person would say something like that. And when you get that kind of clarity, when you're kind of like, for example, this is such a small example, but I'm just going to illustrate how this could work. So when, I'm really prolific nowadays, right? So I'm writing all the time. I'm writing different blogs. I wrote a book. I'm writing emails. I'm writing course materials. I'm writing stuff for my clients. I'm writing on social media. I'm writing all the time, right? And so sometimes every once in a while, someone will kind of rudely, if someone says it nicely, I don't mind, but someone will kind of rudely point out that maybe there was a spelling error somewhere, or, some kind of grammar error. And, I've always come to understand that, before I used to write prolifically, but wanted to write, I would be kind of the same way. I'd kind of nitpick other people's like writing and stuff like that. But now that I'm on the other side, now that I'm super prolific, it's like, you don't understand. I'm writing like thousands and thousands of words every single day, and I'm consistent with it, and I'm getting all of that out there into the world, right? Obviously, there's going to sometimes be a spelling error every once in a while, right? Because you're so prolific. And so when someone rudely points that out, not nicely, I don't mind that, but when someone rudely points it out and just makes it seem like, who are you to write something if you can't even spell check or something? My initial psychologist hat reaction is actually, wow, that person really wishes that they were writing, but they're not. Like that person is going around the internet and nitpicking other people's writing because they literally wish that they were writing. And they imagine that if they were writing, they would like hone and perfect this blog post because they're not used to writing so much. They would think that just writing one thing would be this huge masterpiece and everything has to be perfect. And so in that way, I can kind of put on my psychologist hat and understand why the heck someone would rudely talk to me like that. And, in that kind of way. It's driven by their own deeper wants or fears or motivations. And so that's what I want you to do. If someone is ever rude or belittling or condescending to you about anything to do with changing your relationship with alcohol, put on your psychologist hat. If someone just says something like, oh, I don't have a problem with that, you know what I mean? Ooh, that's a big red flag. No one would say that. No one would feel the need to say that unless they themselves are trying to deflect the fact that they're not happy with the way alcohol shows up in their life, right? So there's all of these things, and even the old-fashioned paradigm of you're a heavy drinker and you need to quit alcohol, and we're gonna then all feel bad for you because you were the screw up in our lives or in our world. That is breaking. That paradigm is not really true anymore. Everyone is getting to a point where like, is alcohol really serving me? And it's now the most bravest, wisest people who are making that change. And so other people might want to put you in that boat. Like, oh, you can't drink, you can't handle it, right? And they're trying to be condescending. But when you start to make a change in a different light, when you're like, you know what? I really want to be proud of myself every day. I really want to love myself more. I really want to be healthier. I really want to see how changing my relationship with alcohol could really help me achieve more of what I want out of life. It's hard to then be condescending to you, right? It's like you're the one with the power in that scenario. You're the one with the self-confidence. And so people honestly sometimes don't know how to relate to that. And the old-fashioned way might not work anymore. So there's just really typical that changing your relationship with alcohol brings up other shit in other people. It brings up other fears in other people. And like I said before, if someone says something rude to you and they have not made this change, like, they don't matter. Like, literally, their opinion doesn't matter at all. And they might even be trying to be hurtful because they don't actually want you subconsciously to change, because they want to keep you down. I mean, think of this example too. There's two married couples. There's a married couple, right? And the woman and the man are kind of overweight, and the woman's much more overweight, right? So she is starting a diet, and she starts a diet and she cleans up her food and she starts working out and going on runs. The partner, even though maybe he's less overweight, is all of a sudden like, hey honey, do you want to go out tonight? Do you want to go out to our favorite restaurant? Or maybe he buys more snacks. Like, it's super subconscious and weird, but sometimes the other person wants the one to fail because they don't want to lose their eating partner, or they don't want to think that, oh gosh, now I'm going to have to make a change, right? Now the husband's going to have to go on a diet and clean up his food and go on these runs. So he'll sabotage his wife. You see how that can play out? So there's just so much of a richer dynamic in any kind of human relationship that goes to show that they have their own issues. They have their own things that they're dealing with. Maybe they have a complicated relationship with alcohol too. Maybe they feel like they're not doing enough with their life, and so they want to keep other people down and make them feel not successful. Maybe they're just not happy either with their own status quo, whatever that looks like in their life. Again, earlier I shared this example of you wanted to start a business and Uncle Bob is like, well, all businesses fail. Why does Uncle Bob say that? He has to say that to literally scare himself out of his own dreams, to make it okay that he never made the change, right? That's how human psychology works. So now that you're taking a break from alcohol, now that you're learning and doing a deep dive into your own understanding of your own emotions, your own thought patterns, your own, like, this is called the human condition. You are not alone, right? Most of our negative thought patterns are incredibly uniform. Like, all humans have them. And yet then we believe somehow that we're the only ones, right? Like, that's how it works often. So once you start understanding and learning more, and as you're taking a break from alcohol, you're getting to know yourself better, and maybe you're learning more through, courses and programs and coaching and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. It's time to put on your psychologist hat. It's time to start seeing other people's responses and behavior through a different lens of really understanding that it's probably not about you, and it's more so their own psychology that's driving their rude behavior. And once you can understand that, it doesn't forgive them. Obviously, it doesn't make them completely off the hook for being mean or rude or hurtful to you, but you can distance yourself a little bit from it. You can be like, you know what? That person said something because they're dealing with their own fears, their own insecurities. And it actually has way less to do with me than I think. And you can then move forward. Now, even if something that you're trying to make a change around is something that you've tried so many times before, hello, as I said in the beginning, it takes 7 years often from the time we want to make a change with our relationship with alcohol until we actually make sustainable changes. You're not behind, right? Even if you've tried this before, you're not behind. Like, this is the process. And when that study came out, this showed that most Americans only made it 10 days through dry January. This is a lot of people who did it, right? So there's heavy drinkers there, there's normal drinkers there, sorry, I never like to use the word normal, but you get my drift. Like, there's lighter drinkers, there's regular drinkers, there's daily wine drinkers there's binge drinkers, there's all kinds of drinkers involved in that group. And the average couldn't make it past 10 days. Most people have a hard time removing alcohol from their life. And obviously they do because they do it on their own. They do it in a vacuum. They just try to remove the alcohol. And that's why I'm so passionate about offering actual programs and courses and coaching that change your mindset around how you view alcohol, so that it's not a game of willpower. It's a game of you understanding and literally changing the thoughts and the subconscious desires that you have on an internal level, so that alcohol stops having the allure over you. And so that is obviously why I'm so passionate about doing this work, because it is hard on your own. It's really hard on your own. And that's normal, and that's typical, and that's common. So you should never feel bad if it's hard for you, because there's maybe something, a mindset shift that you still haven't had yet, or there's a new perspective that you're going to gain, or maybe a really deep dive into a program that can really guide you step by step about every single challenge that really needs to happen in order for you to change your mindset around alcohol. So have some compassion for yourself, have some patience for yourself, have some grace for yourself. I think we hold ourselves up to such a high standard, and if we're not perfect, we completely crumble, and it deteriorates our self-worth and our self-esteem. Well, you know what? We were never meant to be perfect on this planet. We were meant to grow. And you know what growth means? Growth means making progress. Growth means trying. Growth means even if you failed in the past, you start and try again. Growth means learning and engaging and going deep into learning and into, really changing your understanding and your mindset. Growth means reading a book. Growth means listening to a podcast. Growth means engaging in a community of people who are also trying to change their lives. That is all progress. That is all growth. The days that you don't drink are amazing. A day that you slip is like, okay, that was a lesson learned, no matter what, as long as you're moving forward, as long as you keep on this idea that your life is not going to be stagnant. You're not going to settle. You're not going to accept the status quo. You are going to keep learning and growing and putting yourself out of your comfort zone. You are making a huge progress, and you should be incredibly proud of yourself. So I am super, super excited for any of you who's on this journey, because there's just so much that growth gives you. Growth is one of the top human needs that we have as humans. We are not taught this when we're younger, and we stop growing oftentimes by the times we're adult. We don't really put ourselves out of our comfort zones. We don't learn new information. We don't join new communities. A lot of that stops by the time we're out of college. And so by being here, you are on a journey of growth. And when you fulfill that top human need, it feels pretty freaking good. It feels really pretty freaking good. And you have to stop measuring yourself along the lines of this black and white thinking of all or nothing. I'm either perfect and amazing and I worked out and I drank my green smoothie and all this stuff, or I'm a failure. You know what I mean? Because every step in the right direction means you're making progress and you're having growth. So I'm very, very excited that you're here. I'm very proud of you. I think you're doing something incredible that most people won't do. And I think that that means that they don't deserve to say anything about what you're doing. I think that unless they're doing it too, they don't get to say anything. And that's the thing, is if they were doing it too, if they were also doing this, they wouldn't say anything like that, right? Because someone ahead of you, someone like me, someone like who's already alcohol free, you know, for a year or two, would never look at someone who's just starting to take a break from alcohol, or maybe they started and then drank again and started and just drink again. They would never be like, oh, you're doing that again? Never. Like, they would be so happy and so proud. And it's just like how a toddler, how many times do they fall before they can walk? Right? How many times do they fall before they can walk? And do we all say like, hey, baby, you're never going to walk. Please just give this up right now. Please just stop doing this. Of course not. No, because we are further along than that toddler and we know the journey and we know that, oh my gosh, like every step up is the step in the right direction. And it's okay if you fall sometimes, right? Think of yourself as that toddler, and anyone who would be rude to that toddler clearly has no idea because they haven't made this change in their life either. Okay, so it's great to see you. I'm going to sign off now. Stacey says real quick, I outright assured my husband that he doesn't need to stop drinking. He has been supportive from day one, but I wanted to let him know. That's very, very sweet. And I think a lot of times we do fear that, again, one person changing might necessitate the other. And so it just creates a little bit of weirdness. And being able to rebond in your relationship as you are growing, you know, while the other person is maybe not doing this particular thing in their life, can be a really healthy thing to make sure that you don't forget about them and that you're including them in your life as well. All right, so signing off now. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next week.